You know what time it is. You know why we're here. First and foremost, Merry Christmas, as I think this will be the last video I actually upload before Christmas, and if you don't celebrate that, well, have a good holiday or whatever you do, or don't celebrate, I guess just have fun. So I was sitting there the other day and I wanted to try something a little different this year. Mainly because I've already covered the most festive of necromorphs a few years ago, that giant spider thing from Dead Space 3. Remember how the thing would take you out? Good lord. Ouchies. Anyhow, speaking of horrific levels of body alterations and spinal snaps, this year I figured we'd cover all the ways in which Harry and Marv, also known as the Wet Bandits because the douchers would leave straight up sinks running, adding insult to injury, literally bite the dust for that one. Now obviously this detracts a little bit from what I normally do, but hey, that doesn't matter because it's fun and it's a festive time of year. There's no way this doesn't end up in a mass unsubbing. So let's get to it. Also, I'm in North Dakota in the middle of a blizzard right now in my truck recording because I'm with my girlfriend's family and there's a lot of people in the house and a lot of kids too, so I can't really record. So if you hear a bunch of wind noise in the background, yeah, that's because I'm sitting in my truck in an open field. Anyways, we kick off our story with a strange question. How does this dad afford this house on a single income? What does this dude actually do? Also, this house is up for sale if I remember correctly. As someone let in a cop, step one, never let a cop into your house just randomly, not because of some crazy thing, but more like, you know, come back with a warrant, rights and all that. As he tries to track down any offspring that will answer his questions, Mr. Calkin goes to harass his mom about watching a movie. To be quite frank with you, everyone in this family is a complete turd to Kev's on the bus over here, and for realistically no reason. As the dad comes out, he talks about how they're going to France. Why? Why would you ever go there? That's basically the planet's California. Kev is instructed to go pack his suitcase as Joe Pesci continues asking offspring where their parents are. They continue cyberbullying Kevin, who is gonna go full on trench coat at some point if this treatment continues. Also, fun fact, this house, like what you're seeing right now, the whole thing was built in a gymnasium at a school. It's not a real house. However, the house outside is a real house. So as Kevin goes to hang out with Broham, worried about French babes not shaving their pits, brother, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, there are no French babes. They're French. Going to look at old man Marley, he's spreading salt out on the driveway with the same shovel that he murdered half the neighborhood with, apparently. Unconvicted though, don't worry about it. Being spotted, they hide as Tokyo Drift shows up with a pizza, 20 minutes or you don't pay. So people have died actually in real life because of Domino's promotion where it was 30 minutes or you don't pay. Pretty rough. As the cop answers the door and gets the pizza, the homeowner then spills the spaghetti out of his pocket about the home's security measures to him. He fails to inform him, though, that a psycho will be left behind to defend the property. This would be considered entrapment in later trials. As Fuller then drinks a product placement Pepsi, the milk is spilled and Kevin gets called a jerk by an adult. This whole family absolutely sucks. So being sent to the attic, everyone continues to be a total clown to Kevin. No wonder he wishes for all of them to disappear and then later snaps. Having learned all the information necessary because the homeowners are dumb, just assuming a dude with a badge should know all this information, in Chicago no less, Mr. Pesci then smiles at them, and then the mom also spills spaghetti out of her pocket about how they're leaving tomorrow. Did anyone check his credentials? Also, absolutely wild that they are putting this kid like an unheated addict, telling his family he doesn't want to see them anymore, which I mean, honestly, totally valid. Not gonna lie, though, kind of a sick attic. As night settles, a storm then rolls in, as a tree branch blows out a transformer with the airport people showing up that morning. Checking her watch, everyone slept in as they scramble to get to the airport. Being harassed by the neighborhood offspring, everyone then loads up and counts heads as Buzz starts being a moron, allegedly, with the neighbor offspring running off. Heading to the airport, they have 45 minutes as they evidently just made it. They even like reopened the doors. Man, pre-9/11 was a crazy time for planes. No shot you're making it in 45 minutes today. 3 hours domestic, 6 hours international. Back at the house, Kevin wakes up to nobody there as his family takes off on the plane. Turning on the TV, he then looks around and sees absolutely no one. So not only do they live in that house, but they are also all sitting first class, at least the adults are. Seriously, what does this dad do for a living? With Kevin free to roam the house unimpeded, he immediately heads down to the basement where all the lights are on. Spotting the furnace, which these things were actually super expensive back in the day, he then runs outside as all the cars are still there and he realizes his family did disappear, which sounds great in theory until the people show up and put you in foster care. Really now it's just a montage of doing stuff until the power goes out. Grabbing the BB Force, now, I guess I really wouldn't call it multiplier, maybe like magnifier. He then proceeds to eat like we all would as a kid as he watches Angels with Filthy Souls. Not giving the guy more than 10 seconds, he then lights him up, telling him to keep the change, you filthy animal, as Mom of the Year checks through everything trying to figure out if she left something behind. Realizing pretty quickly she left Kevin, her almonds are immediately activated. Oopsie doopsies, you just made a big fucky wucky. Now his murder spree will continue unhampered. That night though, the Wet Bandits have arrived and as they watch the lights cut on, pretty much there is no one at any of their houses. Grabbing crowbars, they go to raid the house as Kevin then watches the Grinch. Now, that's a generous term. He's actually passed out from the sugar high. Pulling up to the garage, they whisper outside, which is somehow actually heard by Kevin. Like, those windows have to be super thin, and then flipping on the lights, the wet bandits nope out of there, assuming the parents to be home. Meanwhile, at a Hell on Earth, the airport of Paris, they bully a French woman for the phone, as then they go to call home. Kevin then amps himself up about being the man of the house, since everyone else is gone, as he runs out yelling, he's not afraid anymore, immediately spotting the shovel murderer running back to his parents' home. Calling the cops, she then gets the runaround, and then asks if someone will just go check on Kevin. Well, what are these taxes for? So they finally go to send a cop over to check on him, but Kevin doesn't answer because he has pretty much peed himself because he's scared. Doing the civic duty thing, the cop immediately gives up and then leaves. Nice. The next day, Kevin then burns his face with aftershave as pretty much, I'm now realizing what my life has become as I wrote this. What a character arc. Breaking the shelves, he then steals money from his brother and releases the 8-legger. Gross. Heading outside, he spots the wet bandit's van across the way in another yard, well, driveway technically, and inside they are raiding the house for everything as they hear a message meant for the neighbor about how they are actually gone and they should check on Kevin. Kevin, meanwhile, is grilling an old lady about a toothbrush. Shovel Killer then shows up, walking up on Kevin like a total creepazoid as his hand has been wounded. Running away, he steals the toothbrush by accident as Jimmy then gives chase and then immediately gives up because he can't catch a small child, as then he sicks an overweight cop on him. Running home, Marv does the mega douche thing and then runs the sink while they leave. Telling Harry, he says, it's their calling card. Yes, so now they can link you to all of the break-ins in the area. Very good. So as Kevin walks home, he almost gets run over by Harry as then he smiles at him and he sees his gold tooth, which is what the cop had earlier. Following him home, Kev's on the bus then breaks out into a run as they wonder why he would be running. Probably because you're a creeper in a van rolling up on him. Running to a church because the Lord is absolutely based. He then hides in a nativity scene as then he heads home and he says he will be ready when they come back. That night, he stages a party at the house and inquiring minds wish to know how he got all of these mannequins. Also, how does he know exactly when they are supposed to show up? Is he just doing this the entire night? Meanwhile, in France, everyone eats the things meant for later. Again, who keeps inviting Frank? No idea. Back at home, the pizza man then shows up to drop off the pizza as he's told to leave it on the doorstep and get out of there. $12 for a pizza? We used to be a proper country. Scaring the pizza man, he then nopes out of there as the mom tries to make a deal with an old person and she says she is desperate. Ain't we all? Heading to bed that night, it is now the next day. I'm sure the horrors of home break-ins will commence any moment now. Unloading the groceries, the gal is fairly suspicious, who is in the middle of checking out the groceries for Kevin. 1983 for groceries? We used to be a proper country. Heading home, Tide product placement, a furnace then cuts on once more as the wet bandits lurk in the distance. Mr. Pesci doesn't get why the house looked like it was jumping last night and now it looks abandoned. Yes, that is in fact how parties work. People go home. That's what you're supposed to do. Anyways, Marv goes to break in as Kev's on the bus, then cuts on Filthy Souls, which then scares Marv away. The issue is Pesci thinks ahead and wants to stick around to identify who got blown away so that they don't get stuck with a murder charge. Back at the airport, everything is booked and she is screwed and stuck in Scranton. Was it Scranton, Pennsylvania or something like that? Luckily, John Candy is randomly in the background and hears her plight. Offering a ride as their flight is canceled with 1 to L since we gave England that extra L in 1776, they'll give her a ride to Chicago as it's on the way. That's 703 miles in the Lord's units for reference, or in the heathenistic metric units, which nobody actually uses, that's 1,130 kilometers. Which don't matter, because that's a completely made-up measurement. I mean, who really looked at 1 mile and said, oh, we should make this 1.6 kilometers or whatever it is? Maybe it's like 1.2. Anyways, waiting outside, Kevin then comes out, cutting down part of the tree as then he goes and decorates it. However, the jig is up, the news is out as they appear in the window. Kevin sees a reflection in the ornament as he yells out for his dad as Pesci says he's home alone. Ha! He said it. Deciding that they are coming back that night, having a conversation in broad daylight out loud in the middle of somebody's yard in the open where everyone can hear them, they say they'll be back at 9. Meanwhile, in the polka van, it's a living hell for 703 miles. Heading over to Santa's house, Santa got a parking ticket on Christmas Eve as Kevin immediately tells him his address and then asks for his family back. Giving Kevin some product placement Tic Tacs, Santa's Honda is a 1982 Honda Civic. No shot that thing wouldn't go. Now stalled because of a loosey-goosey clutch, maybe a bit more in line with reality. I actually sort of forgot how long this movie is before the body-crushing injuries start. Hopefully you're just enjoying the ride so far, and if not, well, you're a nerd. Just understand, I'm actually recording for you. in -2-degree temperatures in my truck, and the heat is already gone in this thing. It's because I love you. That's the type of parasocial bonding that built this channel. Anyways, spotting a family that actually likes one another, it further highlights Kev's on the bus is totally alone this year. Walking past the church, he decides to head inside, and holding choir practice in there, he spots Shovel Killer as then he mean mugs him. SK then gets up and approaches him, telling him Merry Christmas, and asks if he can sit down. His granddaughter is up there singing in the choir as they talk. What's really crazy is SK is aware there are a lot of things going around about him. So Shovel Killer really knows he's the Shovel Killer. Was the story true? Because otherwise, why would he actually care what a bunch of younglings think about him unless there was some sort of, adults must be talking about it. Nobody cares. If a bunch of kids thought I was a Shovel Killer, I'd be like, absolutely I am. But if a bunch of adults do, I'd be like, ooh, that's not good. Anyways, so Shovel Killer apparently had an argument with his son, and they haven't spoken to each other since, which is dumb because life is finite. Talk while you can. So they shake hands as Shovel Killer says he will potentially go and call his son while Kev's on the bus goes to set up the house of death traps. Finally, it's happening. I really forgot how long they hold off for this part. So getting home, he locks up the house as he says he has to defend it. Wasting time drawing plans first for some reason, he then goes and sets up the house with water, tar, and many other traps as well as fallback points to enter the treehouse. Eating dinner, it's 8:57. Luckily, the Wet Bandits are very punctual about their time frames, and eating product placement Kraft mac and cheese, the clock strikes 9. The clock strikes 12. Anyways, he locks and loads Brides of Christ. And knocking on the door, they taunt Kevin as he fires a BB gun right into the bags of Joe Pesci. Here we go. Now, given the pant material in the way, incredibly painful, but not exactly going to break the skin. However, given that if it made a direct strike, this could cause bruising and even bleeding in that area, and this in turn could cause a rupturing to take place. Now, the question is, why does a nut shot hurt so bad? Well, think about it from a genetic prodigy level. It is natural for males to compete and fight over females. However, when the prodigy bag gets hit, it's sort of like the body's off switch. The fight is over immediately because future offspring are threatened. What's interesting is how the pain actually travels and why it travels. The genitofemoral nerve, which innervates the testes and scrotum, will carry the pain signal specifically to the spinal area known as L1 and L2. This is the lumbar area of the spine, which houses the linguinal nerve, which will actually send out sharp radiating pain signals that then travel up the pedunal nerve. As it's important to remember, the genitofemoral nerve also shares this area of the spine with nerves that detect pain from the abdomen, which is why it feels like it's moving upwards and why your stomach will hurt. This is pretty much what's going to end fights immediately between males. The signal also does not subside quickly either. And now you know Joe Pesci's testicle being hit and in pain, the associated reasons about it. God, I love it here. So Marv then puts his face through the dog door next as he's immediately shot in the forehead. While painful, the human skull can easily withstand that sort of hit. Harry then goes around to the front, where we get potentially our first life-altering injury. Going up the stairs, he slips, landing on his spine full force. Now, even while not that high, it's important to remember the human body is something of a glass cannon. This type of fall can actually easily put you out of the game and even paralyze you. Now, I'm gonna do some force and physics and all that stuff. Bear with me, but let's assume Joe Pesci is around 160 pounds, and let's say the fall was around 3 feet or so. Given that he lands on a hard surface, the reality is that that amount of force would be somewhere in the range of 14,600 pounds of force. And depending on which vertebrae we are talking about, with the lumbar being the larger of the vertebrae, realistically, it only takes around 2,200 pounds of force to actually cause a crushing injury to vertebrae. And given that is over 7 times the amount of what was actually applied because of that fall, this indicates that it is highly likely that Harry would have broken his back in this instance. The issue is when a vertebrae breaks, while it can be crunched, so to speak, what really happens is shards can be pushed into the spinal cord. Once this happens, this can actually lead to paralysis through spinal severing, meaning he would probably not be walking away from this. Now, it's also based on pure chess as well. Obviously, in life, it could happen, but how a person falls could prevent being paralyzed. However, in this case, Harry probably isn't walking away without some sort of tweaked back at best or paralysis at worst. It really is that easy to screw yourself up. So, knocking the wind out of himself, Marv immediately falls down the stairs now as well. Now, the benefit of him in this instance is that he slides rather than stops, transferring the force. However, given that he was sliding, you're talking about ruptured blood vessels in the thigh region and possibly a bruised pelvis and femoral area. Not lethal, but painful nonetheless. Getting back up to actually break into the house, the crowbar then falls on his head. This alone, from that height, could actually crack your skull or cause a subdural brain bleed quite easily. However, the real dead man is still Harry. as he tries to get back up, he straight up falls backwards again, landing on his neck. Now the issue here is the cervical vertebrae are much more delicate than the lumbar vertebrae. They are not designed to handle crushing blows, which they only actually require roughly about 390 pounds of force before they will start splintering. It is at this point that I'm going to do something I had no idea I was going to do right up until just now, and issue a death count. Marv dies right here from a snapped neck, severing the spinal column, leading to immediate shock and a flatline. There is no shot after landing this way that he was getting back up to raid that house. Along with that, the stairs themselves would be pushing in on the cervical vertebrae, inducing a focal point that would also damage the spine greatly. So as Marv goes to get back up, he gets his footing as then he goes to break in. He's able to just open the door because it was just open, and then walking in, he starts turning on the lights as this triggers a trap. A clothes iron from this era, judging by what I'm seeing, is probably gonna weigh about 3 to 4 pounds. And given, let's say it falls around 15 feet or so and strikes him square in the face, this would probably be about 18,000 pounds of force spread out over a very small distance to stop. At minimum, a severe concussion could not be avoided, which would lead to actual brain damage. This would mean, at minimum, some of the neurons in the frontal lobe would necrose inside of the skull. Along with this, the nasal bone would be broken easily, and coupled with this, the maxilla would also be fractured in several places, and the teeth would probably be dislodged, as well as the frontal bone of the skull would be cracked in a few places. This could trigger immense bleeding around the eyes, as the orbital bone would be broken, which would then lead to black eyes. Internally, intracranial hemorrhage would be highly likely due to the impact force. So at minimum, a trip to the ICU. At maximum, knocked out, compromised airway, and potential death. So second death very likely confirmed. However, Harry miraculously survives, as then he goes to grab the door handle and burns his hand. Well, Harry didn't survive the clothes iron, he survived snapping his neck, so easily sustaining third-degree burns on his palm. The level of nerves here would make this incredibly painful. Meanwhile, Marv is back up trying to climb the stairs. As he walks up, he immediately steps on a nail, piercing his foot. The main issue, however, is the fact that he falls backwards. Marv has walked up like 7 stairs, which would put him on average about 4.5 feet up. Marv is larger than Pesci, so let's assume that he is around 200 pounds. He is falling onto a hard surface, so instant stop with nowhere for the energy to go but through his body. This would be around 27,400 pounds of force traveling through his spine. Going back to the 2,200 pounds of force needed to damage a vertebrae, this is over 16 times. Wait, no, not 16 times. Somebody get Todd Howard out of here. This is over 12 times the force needed to damage your back. Even if the vertebrae are not damaged somehow, you are talking about rib fractures at this point, or at minimum, disc herniations. And this can pressure on the spinal cord as well, leading to temporary paralysis. However, it's much more likely that Marv would sustain greater injuries than Harry outside during his first fall. However, this is not really a guaranteed death, so we won't count it as of yet, although life-altering damage is definitely a possible outcome. So going around to the back door, Harry goes to break in, testing the doorknob first, as then he opens the door, and he has his hat lit on fire. Now, given the hat was there to absorb some of the heat, this was still a solid 5 seconds of flame contact. I counted. And this is what is known as a torch, which would cause very deep burns. And given that this is the scalp and not very thick, you're talking about burns all the way to the actual bone after about 5 seconds. This would not kill him unless the infection got him later, but this would permanently destroy the hair follicles. This episode is sponsored by Keith. Essentially, his scalp is forever altered by this event. Back up once more, Marv then grabs his crowbar and slips again. Pesci enters the home, now yelling at Kev's on the bus, as Harry heads down to the window barefooted. Opening a door, Pesci is then covered in grease and feathered as well. Tar and feather your local politician. Marv then enters the house, immediately stepping on ornaments, slicing open his feet, and this would cause bleeding and very likely would damage them. I mean, it would also be incredibly painful given all the nerves in the feet. If you aren't aware, the feet are highly innervated with pain sensors, and the reasoning is you need your feet to hunt. So if your body needs to know any part of it that is damaged, it's going to be the feet and what is happening there at all times, because if there's an injury there, it could be life-threatening if you can't chase after prey, so you need to actually let it heal. Therefore, your body has elected to have many pain receptors in this area. So, no death, but definitely hurting. Finding one another, they then look ridiculous. Kev is upstairs as they slip on some micro machines, and this is a baseline fall of about 10,000 pounds of force, so still 5 times the amount needed to damage the spinal column. Not to mention, you gotta talk about the buildup of injuries. Let's say you slightly cracked your vertebrae. Any more direct hits could damage the already weakened vertebrae, causing far more reaching consequences. I have no idea why I said consequences that way. Yet somehow, they persist. Why do you persist, Mr. Anderson? Because they choose to rob people I hate thieves. Anyway, so the psychopath then runs further upstairs as he throws down a paint can. Now, these are full and marked as 1 gallon, so these would be around 10 to 12 pounds. And given the pendulum method used here, let's assume the can is traveling about 13 miles per hour or so and then slams into the face of Marv. It would impact with almost 2,000 pounds of force, and given his previous injury, likely weakening the integrity of the bone, this would induce a major facial fracture, furthering the problem and very likely giving Marv a traumatic brain injury, furthering the issue with his frontal lobe. Along with this, again, you're talking about cracked teeth at minimum and likely a broken mandible as well. I doubt a brain bleed would really take place at this point, but this injury would be incredibly painful. And the same can be said for Harry when he gets hit with, I guess, all the information concerning the fall from the stairs applies here as well. Because of this, Marv has died for a second time, as this is his 3rd death, and Harry impacts and is cushioned, I guess, by Marv. And if this is the case, if Marv somehow didn't die, this would break his ribs, severing the ribs from the spine, very likely, collapsing the sternum. The shock itself could cause the actual heart to go into ventricular fibrillation, as the heartbeat is then disrupted, leading to his death as well. Either way, I don't think Marv survives this event. At this point, it's seen Harry is missing teeth as Kev then goes and calls the cops and hangs up. Ducking under the line, Harry then trips as Kev exposes Marv to the spider, freaking him out. Kev's on the bus, then goes to take zipline as Marv goes to help Harry. Raising in a panicked way, we can assume somewhere around the range of 500 to 2,500 pounds of force is applied, hitting him with the crowbar. While hitting him in the chest, this would have put him firmly in the range of cracking a rib, mainly because ribs crack at around 700 pounds of force, and if 2,500 pounds were applied, this would have been catastrophic for a rib that got hit. Now the issue is, cracking a rib is bad, but if the rib pierced the pleural cavity, this would actually cause a lung to collapse. And while not always seen as a massive issue today, this can very easily lead to death if not treated. Also, I'm not saying collapsing a lung is not a big deal, it definitely still is. This could also cause internal bleeding in the space, basically leading to suffocation due to your own blood filling up this area. And this means the lungs can't actually expand. It really just depends on how lucky you are, but the reality is, this blow, at minimum, would crack a rib. Smacking Marv with a crowbar, easily a fractured humerus bone and radius and ulna bone if the forearm was struck. So Kev now nopes out of the house towards the treehouse as he breaks through to the other side. Marv and Harry suspect he committed the sewer slide, and doing the intelligent thing, they decide the best course of action is to go out on this rope and climb over to the treehouse. There was definitely no better route to take. Nothing could have been done. This is the best way to do this thing. So as they do, Kev's on the bus then cuts the line, causing them to pendulum swing into the side of the house. And given the fall was quick and not really the same as a direct fall into the ground, I mean, if you take their weights and the fact that they were virtually in free fall for at least 1 second before swinging horizontally, this would put them at around roughly 22 miles per hour, hitting the wall. With their weights, this would mean Pesci would have hit at around 7,800 pounds of force, and Marv would hit at around 9,800. Because of this, the arms would act as crumple zones absorbing the impact, but this would result in the radius and ulna bones being fractured. The elbows would then strike as well and would fracture at the tip, and likely they would become dislocated because of this event. The humerus bone would not fare any better, but when it breaks, it's very likely this would result in nerve damage to the area because it is also highly innervated. In fact, I had a fraternity brother who ended up breaking his humerus bone, and he couldn't feel, I believe, his forearm for like 2 months. Really wild. The feet would have broken as well because they struck, and this would actually cripple them, preventing them from giving chase. They would not die, but this would require an ICU trip and several months of healing. Along with these injuries, the ribs would likely sustain fractures as well, or at minimum severe bruising and intercostal muscle pain. Somehow getting up as they go to give chase to Kevin as he runs off, even with their broken feet, they then run to the neighbor's house as he heads to the basement, which is currently flooded. As then he goes upstairs, they have beat him to the door, and then hanging him up on the door, Shovel Killer arrives. With the strength possessed and how they were actually knocked unconscious, it could be assumed that roughly 10,000 pounds of force was imparted. And this is catastrophic for the brain. The issue with this movement here is the brain on both of them would be kind of like going back and forth. And this is what happens with a concussion. Your brain literally bounces around inside of your skull. The back of the brain would then run into the occipital bone before slamming into the frontal bone. This in turn would cause probably some bruising and a severe concussion, with the loss of consciousness confirming that damage has been incurred. With Harry, the reverse happens where it runs into the frontal bone first, and that would be more concussed with the initial hit. And this also renders him unconscious, which indicates he has also received brain damage. It is also very likely at this point that the brain bleed would be inevitable due to that much force being imparted into the skull. And this means, Essentially, this is a double kill right here, which brings us up to 5 deaths in total. Grabbing Kevin, they then go outside as the cops show up and arrest Harry and Marv, who seemingly were still unconscious inside. So here's the thing, life isn't like the movies. Being knocked out for a few seconds is bad enough, but if you are knocked out for several minutes, this indicates severe brain damage and likely dysfunction to follow. And this is a sign of a traumatic brain injury incurred and is likely going to be far-reaching, which in turn follow you for quite a while. Neuroplasticity would kick in and help offset it, but the reality is in older adults, it is limited in its abilities, meaning that the hit Marv received may result in visual problems due to damage to the area, and hit that Harry received, emotional control as well as cognitive thinking may be impaired. Getting pulled out of the house, the cops now know every house they hit as they left water running, which links them to their crimes. Telling them they're the wet bandits because they're idiots, they get put in the cruiser and then taken away. Kevin then taunts the robbers, likely to turn murderers, as he sets up the house for Christmas. Back in the polka hell, Mom of the Year talks about how she's a bad parent as John Candy tells her she's not. But everyone here is, they're all bad parents. So yes, you are a bad parent as well. So the next day, as Kevin then wakes up, it's Christmas. Running downstairs calling out for his mom, she's nowhere to be seen. Looking outside, I write this as again, I'm in Minot with a blizzard about to bear down on us apparently. And currently it's bearing down on me, and I'm recording this in a very cold truck. I wrote, I'll keep you posted. There you go, I kept you posted. Mom of the Year comes in, calling out for Kevin, and then sees everything set up as he runs downstairs and freezes up because, I don't know, reasons, I suppose. And saying Merry Christmas, she apologizes for being a terrible mom as they hug it out. He asks where everyone else is as they now all show up. There was another plane, and seemingly Mom of the Year didn't need to make the 703-mile trip, as Kevin reports he went shopping and everything's cool. Also, Kevin's about to get blamed for that broken basement door straight up. Finding a gold tooth on the ground, the father now becomes mega suspicious of his wife. Meanwhile, Shovel Killer is out there hugging it out with his son and granddaughter because he decided to stop being a nerd about calling his son. Again, life is finite. Make your amends. It's not worth holding on to crap. Buzz then yells at him for destroying his room at the end and thus concludes Home Alone. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you want me to do this again, maybe with like Home Alone 2 next year, let me know. This is a little outside of the norm, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. If you did enjoy, then please leave a like and comment as it helps get the video out there. Otherwise, you're a huge dork if you don't do that. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Roanoke Tales link, and Patreon in the description. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can go click that. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the astronaut tier, we have It's Not a Spoon, Kusith, and Lipsy Gingy. Thank you guys for the awesome support. At the astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Mayura, and Webitron Supreme. Thank you guys as well. And at the scientist tier, we have Stutz, Frank Shaftcrank, Some Big Nerd, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, The Homeless Guy in the Street, Jason, and Scott Osteen. Thank you guys as well. And to the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. You're absolute ballers. It goes a long way towards helping out. So thank you. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.